that's that. I'm Joe. I'm at a company called Legal Shield, and we are in the legal space, so it's a subscription to legal services, and I work on the member team, so just anything around the users that are using our apps or websites or anything like that. So I'm a product owner and have been at Legal Shield for about a year, been kind of in a few different startups around OKC in the last 5 years or so. And so, yeah, I've been kind of at Legal Shield. I was kind of telling some of these guys over here, we are a fairly young product group. So the product organization has been around a couple of years and hasn't really had any structure put around it or anything like that. So there's a lot of just the classic, like, we built something and then we realized, oh, the users don't use this, you know, things like that. You have the classic, whoever screams the loudest gets the thing that they're wanting built. And so we're trying hard to put together processes and things that will help us build things that matter to our users, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to keep our platforms around, and that's who's paying our paychecks and all of that. So user research, that's a huge part of that, right? Knowing what's valuable to your users and everything. So I've started kind of trying to dive into this, and I heard a really interesting talk, I was mentioning that earlier, at Mind the Product this year. And they were talking about just who owns the voice of the user. It was kind of the question that she had posed, and so she started going through a bunch of slides, but as I was putting this talk together, and I posted the just the whole meetup on LinkedIn and on Meetup, and someone was just asking, well, what the heck is user research anyways? And so I figured, I didn't know if everyone knew. I'm sure a lot of us understand what it is, but it's basically, I found a good quote, the process of understanding the impact of design on an audience, and I like pictures better, so this kind of explains it, I think. So if you often have great ideas for your things, but whenever you ship it out to your users, they see a completely different thing. So really important to understand that. So started asking the question, who knows what the user wants? Obviously, I come from product, so I think I know what the user wants, right? Like, that's my job to know what the user wants. I should be doing all kinds of research and knowing them. Design, obviously, they're building things. They're going to have to know kind of the user, be able to get in their head, that sort of thing. The business team, they pride themselves in knowing what people are going to pay for, what they're going to buy. They do the market analysis, and they know what's out there and how to be competitive. The engineering team, they're building it. They obviously are going to be a little bit opinionated on what they're building and think that they know what the user's going to want to use. Customer service, they're talking to the users all day, every day. Obviously, they have some input there. And the executive suite, they are running the company, right? And they should know kind of what's going on with the users, what they would want. So, I mean, in a way, everyone knows what the user would want, but really, the person that knows is the user, right? So they're the ones that know what the user wants. They don't always know how to tell you what they want. I think it's Henry Ford that said if we had asked the users what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? So people ask for things based on what they want. But they just don't know how to tell you. They also don't work for your company, so like they don't really have a lot of skin in the game to tell you and be real forthright in what they want. So it's hard to kind of understand that. So whose job is user research? I mean, no one's out there saying it's not my job. So I mean, we all think that we know, and that tends to cause, I don't know, some collision at times, you know. Different people throughout the company have their opinions, obviously, and that can, if you're not communicating well and if you're not aligned, then that can cause a lot of problems. And so that's kind of what we've been trying to do at Legal Shield, is kind of build processes around our user research that bring everyone into it, right? Make it a collaborative effort. And we just got to hire a person who their sole job is user research, not design, not product, not anything else. User research is what their job is. And so we're trying to figure out what that means at this point. And so we're trying to build a culture of research. And I kind of said it, collaboration, it's super important, right? You have to be able to bring everyone on board. Obviously, you want to have open channels of communication. And this stuff's easy to say, right? But like, how do you do that? And so we started having meetings weekly with various business stakeholders, and it's kind of an open invite to, we've opened it up to a lot of people, but it's kind of a core group that show up regularly, and we just talk about the things that are coming up, right? It's been really good. We've been doing it for a couple of months, and it's helped keep surprises at bay, right? Like our company's pretty large. We were valued at $2 billion this last year, so it's a pretty good sized company. And there are a lot of employees, right? A lot of business stakeholders, a lot of people that care about what we're building. And so opening up this meeting to a lot of people has let them ask their questions, let them say, hey, we were planning on this thing in the next quarter or so. Where's that at in your priorities? And so it's been really good outside of just kind of a quarterly meeting where we say, hey, here's what we're going to deliver this quarter. It's been weekly, and we all get on the same page. Synergy, no, I'm just kidding. I was going on with business buzzwords there. So like I said, we made it a part of our product development process. So we have that weekly meeting. It's also a place for the business team to come and say, hey, here's this thing that I have coming down the road, and we're able to then kick off user research processes. So like we listed out all the steps that it takes to bring something from idea to out in the market, and that was one of the very early things that happens. And there's a few different user research steps throughout the process. So early on, it's the business team, whenever they come with an idea, they have to come with, oh, here's the value that we think it'll add, here's why usually they don't really have a whole lot of numbers at this point, and that's okay. We want to have that conversation with them. We want to help them get those numbers that would help us make the decision, yes, this is something of value. So there's a lot of things that have to go into it. We want to research, do user interviews. So we use a website called usertesting.com, and it lets us get just wireframes or functioning software, whatever, in front of our users, and it videos their interaction with it, so we can then have like a video of a user walking through and talking through their experience of something. You can do A/B testing. You can do a lot of different things with this tool, and that lets us start to ask, well, in this case, qualitative questions, so just getting a feel for how the users are interacting and how they care about or how they perceive your site and everything. So it's not like that first meme that I threw up there, where you think you're showing the user one thing and they have a whole different view of what you built for them. So anyways, put that into our process. Sustainable documentation, I feel like user research, you often are running a lot of experiments, or you just like, let's say kind of what I was talking about with usertesting.com, you have a demonstration of a piece of software that you want the users to go through and use, and you have them do that, and then you have like 10 videos or something, each an hour long, maybe not quite that long. That's a lot to expect everyone at the company to review, right? So it's great to have all of that and link to that, but condense the research into something that's maybe a 1 or 2 pager that says, okay, here's this feature that, and here's the value, here's why the users think it was important. We talked to 10 different users or 100 different users, and here were the themes, and you can see the videos here. Here are some really cool ones that you can like pick out 1 or 2 that you want them to watch and link to the specific spots. But posting a book of research for someone to use to make a decision on is kind of difficult, right? So it's just kind of sustainable, but then also another problem that we've had is a lot of our documentation is organized or not organized very well. So we use Confluence, and it's just kind of all over the place, and you have to be a really good searcher to find other people's stuff typically. So just kind of get together as a team and kind of build out your library of documentation, right? And just kind of take the time to make sure that everyone is on the same page and knows where and how to find everything. So again, you have your team, the developers make a simple and intuitive UI, and then the users just don't know what to do with it. But I mean, is what it is, right? Sometimes you spend way too much time building a nice, neatly packaged thing when the user doesn't really care about that. All they care about is being able to eat, right? So 3 bowls would have been fine here. So that's really all that I had. I kind of sped through it a little bit. Wanted to kind of see what you guys are doing, where you're at. Is anyone else doing user research in their companies? Not formally, yeah. Yeah. Right. Nice. Yeah. This is the girl who's talked. I've kind of sourced this around Trisha Wang, and that's I can send out this link in our meetup. It's a video of her talk, and it's pretty good. And she talks through even better like how to really get everyone on the same page. And she was kind of from her perspective. I forget, she was at NASA and then somewhere else, I forget where she was after that, where she is now, but it felt kind of like a battle almost of getting product and the user research teams on the same team, really. and so she kind of talked about some tools on how to build trust and like get the teams to kind of understand we have the same goals and how to share and collaborate better on that. It's pretty cool. Yeah, how do you choose what to research? That's fun. Yeah. So we kind of try to take each feature and we try to give them a priority score. So we'll look at a few different things. So we'll look at the impact to the user, the impact to the revenue. We'll look at the value to the user, the level of effort to build it even, quite a few different things, right? And then, so we're kind of, early on, we don't know all that really. We're kind of making some guesses and some assumptions, but we kind of list out those things, and as we go through the process, we continue it through our discovery process, right? We say, okay, we need to dig into these assumptions, we need to answer these questions, and as we go, we start to get a little bit more confident in those scores that we give everything, and we try to do a smaller amount of research up front, right? Like we obviously it's a huge time sink. It's a lot. So we try to say, oh, this thing, think of the value of this would be huge, but it's a lot of research. Let's start digging into, you can kind of, as you're going, get a feel for how valuable it is. And can, as you continue to adjust those scores, you build a process it's a prioritization machine at that point, right? Like you're not the one saying this is a valuable thing, it's the numbers that are saying it. So there's that, right? Like that's something that we're pushing for. But then there's also the kind of, a lot of leaders, especially at the C level, they're very in tune with the market, and they're pretty forward thinking, right? And so I always think about Jeff Bezos with the Prime pack, like that whole Prime product, right? And when they started, it was just free shipping, and that was unheard of. That was stupid. They were going to lose a ton of money. Like all of the quantitative data said, this is a dumb idea. We're going to lose a bunch of money, right? But he was able to say, yes, but if I'm thinking 10 years down the road here, we like addict our users to free shipping, and our prices are they're like pennies lower than everyone else, right? And now Amazon's prices aren't cheaper than everyone else's, but it's so convenient and everyone's hooked, and you can just say, hey, Alexa, order me some more almonds, I'm out, like whatever. You're able, like they've kind of built into that convenience, right? So like that was kind of forward thinking. They ignored the data. So it's kind of it's a catch-22, right? Like there's no one answer, but that's kind of how we try to do it, right? We try to build a process and a system that tells the various business users no for us, right? Like we don't even have to say no. We just say, oh, well, here's where it fell on the priority list. And then the business users talk to each other, and we facilitate that and say, okay, here's why it's here. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or, oh no, it doesn't make sense. And let's start to we have this intuition. We know where the market's going. We know that Gen Z is doing this thing or whatever, right? And we can start to have those conversations and reprioritize based on that.
As far as who owns the voice, if you're on the development team and you're trying to prioritize things, you might come up with your own list, and then the executives might say, no, that's not our priority. So, that's where, again, you have to ask them directly rather than just assuming what's most important.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, just while I have the microphone, just my perspective, I was in the Air Force. I worked at our headquarters level on projects, and we had a hard time getting the voice of the user, even though we wanted it, because there's so much bureaucracy, and from the unit level, there's so much experience of, well, we sit around and complain about everything, nothing ever happens. And so even trying to just get them to think that if they give input, it'll be listened to is difficult. Yeah. You might have to cajole them a little bit. And giving them feedback on their feedback is good. So if they give you a good idea, let them know that they were heard and that they made that change. That goes a long way to them talking more. And then if they give you an idea and you don't do it, letting them know why. I found that went a long way, because if it's just like, well, I told them to do this and they didn't do it, so obviously they don't listen. But I found when I explained it to them, they were like, well, that makes sense. I understand that decision, and I get it. I'm going to keep giving you feedback. They feel like you actually care, and that human side of it is a big thing, especially in large organizations like the Air Force or a big company like Sonic. Obviously a little different because they're basically internal customers, but even on my team, trying to get feedback from my team, I'm programming something and they're like, well, I don't know how to give feedback because I don't know how to program. And it's like, well, I'm not asking you for programming feedback, I'm asking you to just try it out. Do you have any ideas? And I got tons of great ideas from them. I really learned that no one has all the good ideas. No matter how good your ideas are, you can always get more from other people. So user research in general, no matter what actual user you're talking about, whether it's customers or team members, it's always good to get more voices.
Yeah, for sure. And I found, so my first technology job, I was working with a team on some software that was very internally focused, and the developer that was working on it was very opinionated. He's like, yeah, I know exactly what they need. I'm building them it's going to change their lives. And so then I was like, okay, well, let's go sit and watch them do their job first. And so we sat down there with the customer service person for like an hour, and he was just like, whoa, that's not where I was going at all. Like, I can solve their problem way easier. It's going to take me like a day, and their life's going to be way better. And so that kind of what you were saying, that collaborative, just letting people see it working even early, even just say, hey, I know this is kind of ugly, but just think about the whole flow for this, or, whatever, just getting.
That's another thing I get, they give me ideas, and a lot of times they'll be like, I don't know if you can do this, because in their mind it's really hard, and like, oh, no, that's actually really easy to do.
Right.
And then sometimes they come with something that sounds easy, but it's really difficult.
Just like way off the wall, yeah.
But, again, when you explain to them, well, I could do this, or I could do that with my time, they can make the decision as what's most important to them, rather than.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And kind of back to your first point of like working with the executive stakeholders and whatnot, bringing them data and saying, hey, here's the decision I made and here's why it's so valuable. And I've been there, and that conversation went really well, and I've been on the other end where I'm like, oh, we just didn't get to it, and that didn't go very well, right? And so, like, or we just decided we didn't want to do it, it wasn't the right thing, and well, why? And didn't have data, and so, yeah, it was a brutal conversation.
I'm curious about like how your organization goes through a process of kind of like, first of all, like finding users that are willing to participate, or kind of incentivizing that, and like sort of if you've found over time, like if you have kind of developed what you think is what makes a good evaluative user, or like what your kind of opinions are on that, or just really, or sort of how you narrow it down and how you find people to actually participate.
Yeah. So, fortunately, kind of our user set is kind of the general population, right? So usertesting.com is the tool that we use, and they basically find the users for you. And we've kind of just let them choose those users, and we've tried to choose users that aren't familiar with our company and just get their overall experience as someone with no context is kind of what we've focused on. You can also, with this tool, send specific users over to them. So if you maybe have your power users and you're trying to build a feature for them or something, you can send them over, you can add them in. I've seen people use gift cards, and they're money incentives, different things. There are a lot of different views on that. I'm kind of on the camp of you shouldn't really have to pay people to review your stuff, because you're not going to get as honest of feedback and whatnot. The feedback I'm looking for is, as the general public, would you be interested in this product, right? Like, can you get enough information from this landing page to make a decision to buy? Those are the things that I'm interested in right now. I feel like those are where our company's weak right now. We don't do a great job of direct to consumer, because we do have a full-on, so we have a full sales force. It's a multi-level marketing aspect too of our company, and so that's where a lot of our revenue comes from. They're out there selling for us, so that's kind of where my focus is on the member, on that onboarding experience, and that's where I've been focused for quite a while. So that's kind of where my answer's coming from. Yeah. But I don't know, Brad at Sonic, do you guys have any? How do you choose who you get your feedback from? That whole team. Just need microphones for everyone.
One of the benefits of working for a company that has a broader research group is that they are really good at recruiting, but we do a lot of incentivized recruiting. It's probably a mix of incentivized recruiting for the in-person studies where we want to do a focus group, or we want to have some sort of message board type thing. But a lot of our general just quantitative research is just we send it out to 100,000 people or whoever it is in the group,
just a survey
to try and get
thing.
a survey back from that, and we can usually do that in a couple days. And then we get a really good demographic split and location split. But if we had to do that without that organization, we'd be struggling a lot. I know user testing and tools like that give you a lot of granular control.
Yeah, you
of,
can
like,
decide
finding the right
which
people.
demographics.
I always
and
wonder with
things.
like tools like that though, like how randomized they are and like who's signing up for this stuff. Like I wouldn't sign up for that. And so I don't know if you're already pre-biasing yourself by going to someone who's like eager to give companies feedback about random stuff. And so I think that's always going to be a struggle, is understanding who's giving you that feedback, and what would incentivize them to do so. I think your strategy of like, if you get somebody to fill something out at the end of a sales page, like a hypothetical, I think that makes the most sense to get like the true user intent to buy.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of always wonder about the like Yelp review effect. Like,
Totally.
people that are the most enthusiastic are also going to have really extremes, you know?
Yeah.
It's gonna be either love it or hate it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one thing we've seen is like listening to like app store reviews, or like talking, like you had that list of people who know the customer. It's like the customer service team knows like the worst customer a lot of times, and like they don't necessarily
They know
see
what
it as
the
like
main problems are and the big deals
they might
are,
not understand the like the day-to-day problem versus the like person who called to complain 4 times, and it's like this is the loudest problem, but not necessarily like the most important one to solve next every time.
Yeah, I remember reading a long time ago about like it's kind of like the phenomenon of people who are interacting with technology who are always like considering themselves the fault before they consider the thing that they're using the fault. And it's like for every one person who's willing to like talk to customer service rep off, like, you know, talk their ear off for an hour, there's like 10 people suffering in silence. You know? It's just like my frustrations all day.
Yeah, and then you hear a lot of like you ship something with a bug, and you see just like the handful of things that are coming through, and you're doing the math, and you're like, oh man, there are a lot of people having this problem. Yeah.
An issue from time to time where there's like a tension between the kind of result I would expect using something like usertesters.com, where you're going to see what a novice would do compared to a power user. So in fact, that some feature optimized for one set becomes unoptimized for another. We have a screen where you can apply like a set of recipes to some data, and we felt like it wasn't user-friendly enough, so, you know, we went through and redesigned it and made it so that, you know, somebody could just figure it out. Like, you could just use it. And it was really good for applying, like, 3 user recipes. But, you know, one of the people that does a lot of data entry for us is just immediately like, this is terrible. This is the worst thing. Give me the other one back, because I need to do 1,000 user entries, right? And she's not the normal user, but she's a very, very important user. And it's, I worry a lot about, like, when people say data, it's like there's blindness to data. And, like, I don't know, like, you guys have sort of any kind of, like, methodological discussions before you just run into a study of, like, what are our blind spots or anything like that?
Oh man, that's a tough one. But I mean, so that's why it's important to kind of not just go based on one set of data, right? So you may have your quantitative data, the numbers that are telling you this one thing, but then you're doing your user interviews, so you have the qualitative data, so you're able to kind of balance it, right? And if you get enough user interviews, you can kind of get a bunch of different demographics, and you can talk to the power users, you can talk to the new users and everyone in between, and that's kind of it's hard to know when you're assuming sometimes though, right? Like, you don't know what your blind spots are, that's why they're blind spots, you know. But working with the different teams also is so kind of what this talk is about, is like when you start to work with the different aspects, they all see kind of what you were saying, you know, the customer service team sees the user with the worst problems, you know, and they're the most vocal about it. And then obviously your director of sales, he's got his pulse on what people are really interested in buying, you know, and so.
Getting consistent buy-in from that diverse group of people is really hard.
Oh, it is. It's impossible. Like, you're not going to ever have everyone on the same page, but have you read the book Dream Teams? I forget who wrote it. Really good book. Concept is basically just whenever you have a diversity of opinions on your teams, you're able to make better decisions, right? Because I have this idea over here, and I think it's the best idea, and then you have this idea over here, and you think it's the best idea, and as you guys work to figure out, like, work through it, you know, you come to you figure out this idea, and this is way better than either of your other ideas were, you know. And so that's, you kind of start to see that happening whenever you get those people with all of the conflicts of interest to start to talk through things and hash through it. So.
Go along with that, my supervisor always say to our team, we all agree that not all of us need to be here.
Yeah.
He's like, why do we have a team of people is to have different viewpoints.
Right.
We all just say the same thing, but then most of us.
Yeah. What's the point? Yeah.